Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakahakudash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And when we go to the dictionary definition for the word sedition, it reads, conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And over these past couple of years, we've definitely seen a seditious spirit growing amongst these different people all across the planet towards their modern day kings and princes, these government officials like your mayors, senators, governors, presidents, prime ministers, etc., over economic woes, and especially over all these draconian measures dealing with the Krispy Kreme 1-9 that these different governments have been enacting. And as we get closer and closer to the second coming of Yahweh Shai Hamashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, that seditious spirit among men and not regarding their kings nor princes is going to spill out with blood in the streets, with people going after their government officials and putting them to death. But I opened up this video with that precept to preface this article on LAtimes.com titled, Threats Against Members of Congress Are Skyrocketing. And what do we read about with the definition for the word sedition? Conduct or speech. Threats against a state or monarchy against members of Congress are skyrocketing. It's changing the job. And we'll definitely see from the information in this article that people are not regarding their kings or princes and sending out death threats to them. And also over here in the United States of America, you've already had a few people that were a part of Congress get shot by those that were against their policies. And like I said, as we get closer and closer to Yahweh Shai's second coming, this violence is going to intensify and there will be blood in the streets. And these people are beginning to realize that you politicians are nothing more than narcissistic, vain puppets and prostitutes for whoever your lobbying group is that pays for your funds, and they're getting sick of it. They're seeing that you're constantly giving them the shaft. A few months ago, Representative Norma Torres, Democrat of Pomona, received an anonymous video of someone following her car. The camera pans down to a 9mm handgun on the seat as a male voice says, "I see you. I got something for you." In June, police charged a man with making terroristic threats against Representative Tom Reed, Republican of New York. And there shall be sedition among men, conduct or speech inciting rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. The man left on the congressman's doorstep a dead rat with a noose around its neck and a brick with a family member's name. Police intervened in January when more than a dozen supporters of then-President Trump confronted, surrounded, and threatened Representative Lou Correa, Democrat of Santa Ana, as he was catching a flight at a Washington airport. In a year that kicked off with the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, threats against lawmakers are soaring. In the first 3 months of 2021, the U.S. Capitol Police recorded 4,135 threats against members of Congress. If the pace continues, total threats this year will double those in 2020. It's a trend that has been growing for years, and Capitol Police officers are scrambling to keep pace. They're rethinking the ways they protect members in Washington and elsewhere forging closer ties with the FBI and opening satellite offices outside the Capitol for the first time. It's a changing job for lawmakers who must tread a fine line between being accessible to the people they represent and keeping themselves, their families, and their staffs safe. But when all hell breaks loose, they won't be able to do so. After January 6, some members temporarily relocated their families over concerns that their homes would be targeted. Some wore bulletproof vests to the presidential inauguration. It's difficult, and particularly difficult for the family, said Representative John Garamendi, Democrat, Walnut Grove, who as state legislator once had a gun pointed at him during a town hall. There are risks in this job. There's no doubt about it. We spend millions of dollars, which who did they get most of that money from? Their supporters, those in lobby groups who they really answer to, not the people who vote for them. Nothing more than puppets and prostitutes to let everybody know who we are, so you become a target. Experts blame much of the increase on social media and cable news and how easy it has become to threaten members of Congress behind the anonymity of the internet. 4 years of Trump's divisive and racist rhetoric played a role, they say, emboldening people to say things publicly that they might have grumbled about privately in the past. It's also a side effect of growing partisanship and declining civility. Members have contributed to the problem by sometimes encouraging their supporters to harass political rivals, and activists find it more acceptable to confront lawmakers, not just at town halls, but at officials' homes or as they eat in restaurants. And it's not just a seditious spirit growing amongst men towards their modern-day kings and princes, their government officials. Hey, on the low level, you've got these Americans starting to look at each other sideways and get violent towards each other. And there will be a second civil war on the streets of the United States of America. Everybody's blood's going to be getting shed. It's going to be a free-for-all. Not just civil wars between the average Joe and those in the government, but also race wars, you name it. Some threats have escalated into violent physical attacks. Before January 6th, there was the 2017 shooting of Republican members of Congress and staffers at a practice for the congressional baseball game, and the 2011 shooting of Arizona Representative Gabrielle Giffords at a constituent event. Hey, so people in Congress have already been getting shot at, and this is just a appetizer to the main event when all hell breaks loose. Hey, think about what happened to Benito Mussolini during World War II. Beaten to death, him and his woman shot and hung up upside down by their ankles on fish hooks. Hey, these times are coming back. And since we're living in the last seconds of these last days before the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven, it's going to be especially violent on a whole nother level. The surge in threats has grown exponentially in recent years. In 2016, Capitol Police investigated 902 threats. Former House Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving said in a June 2017 letter to the Federal Election Commission. By 2018, there were 5,206 threats, and by 2020, there were 8,613, according to Capitol Police figures provided to the Times. Capitol Police officials declined interview requests. Many members of Congress don't discuss the threats publicly. Dozens declined requests to speak about their security. Just tallying, monitoring, and investigating the threats has become more difficult for the Capitol Police, which doesn't have the staffing to give all 435 representatives and 100 senators a security detail or to monitor their social media accounts. So that right there shows that these politicians can't be nearly as protected as they want to be. So hey, even more people are going to slip through the cracks and spill your blood. Threats against members of Congress by year: in 2016, 902. In 2017, 3,939. In 2018, 5,206. In 2019, 6,955. In 2020, 8,613. Hey, the numbers just keep increasing with each passing year. Hey, this train that's left station ain't coming back until it reaches its destination, which is you modern day kings and princesses' blood getting spilled in the streets. In May, the department's Inspector General recommended increasing intelligence gathering and surveillance, including creating a division staffed with analysts, agents, and officers, as well as hiring more agents in the threat assessment section. It also urged Capitol Police to work more closely with the FBI to examine threats. In 2020, the threat assessment section had just over 30 agents and analysts to examine approximately 9,000 cases, according to its response to the May Watchdog report. In July, Capitol Police announced plans to open satellite offices to help monitor potential threats, starting in Northern California and Florida, states from which the bulk of the threats come, the department says. Among the billions Congress recently passed to repay the National Guard for protecting the Capitol after January 6 was $47.8 million for member security, for examining threats, including $5.8 million for new security details, $35.4 million to reimburse and train federal and local law enforcement agencies that help protect members, and $6.6 million to hire and train additional agents to gather intelligence about potential threats. Members of Congress are hoping the new offices and funding will allow Capitol Police to take on more of the burden of identifying threats and deciding who is serious and who might just be venting anger online, which is all futile at the end of the day. You can't escape prophecy. Garamendi, the chair of the House Armed Services Readiness Subcommittee, said Capitol Police officers are quick to respond to threats they know about, but don't have the resources for intelligence gathering and surveillance. Hey, so right there, he's saying, look, hey, we can get to issues that we know about, but those that are in the planning and in secret, we don't. So things are definitely going to slip through the cracks. Intelligence, as it applies to us individually, it just isn't there. The normal way is we get a threat and then we inform the Capitol Police or the FBI, hey, we got this threat, why don't you look into it? And they do a good job, he said, but in the intelligence, anticipating, it's not there. Representative Eric Swalwell, Democrat of Dublin, said a staffer spends hours combing his social media accounts for threats that warrant being forwarded to Capitol Police every time Trump mentions his name online or at a rally. My rule is you have to take them at their word, even if a lot of them may not mean it. The second you don't take them at their word is the second you could see someone in your family hurt, Swalwell said. Dozens of cases of people threatening to kill Democrat and Republican lawmakers, so it's on both sides of the spectrum, have been brought in federal court in the last 5 years. Threatening a federal official is a felony, punishable by a fine and up to 6 years in prison. Representative Andy Harris, Republican, for months carried a concealed weapon and scanned the streets before leaving his home after a man called and emailed in December saying he was going to slit the congressman's throat, skin him alive, and kill his family. And we'll end the article on that point. But as you sincere Akim can clearly see, that seditious spirit among men and not regarding their kings or princes, which has been at a simmer, is quickly coming to a boil. And as I've been saying all throughout this video, as we get closer and closer to Yahushua HaMashiach's second coming, it's going to intensify and there will be blood in the streets. This threat we just read about that this man made to that Representative Andy Harris is going to go from being a threat to a reality, and even worse than what he said he would do to that representative. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim are edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.